In this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating this little design that was sent to us by a new EasyStone user. And the first step we want to talk about is what the requirements are. And they actually were provided a transfer from a previous vendor. And this was the transfer from the previous vendor. So this is what we're looking to kind of recreate something similar to this. So we have one row of crystal on the outside, and then we have 2 rows of cobalt, and then we have 1 row of crystal around the 2 rows for our letter A. So this is kind of what we need to recreate. Now in this particular example, the finished product right now is roughly 1 3/4 inches. Now, because we're going to be creating this as a template-based design, we won't be able to create it exactly like this and maintain that 1 3/4 inch height. And the reason being is because this original design, you can see that the rhinestones are almost touching, so this was done with a rhinestone placement machine. Whereas when we create our design, we're going to be using slightly larger diameter holes than the actual rhinestone, which in this case I'm using 2.6 is what I cut my templates out at. And then we have a 0.5 millimeter spacing between stones, whereas if we have a rhinestone placement machine, we can almost set those stones touching like they did here. So the design is going to have to give. Either it's not going to be able to have 2 rows of red and blue and maintain that 1 3/4 inch height, or the height of the design has to change. Now, there is a way for us to gauge an idea of how much the height of our design will have to change. And the way we want to do that is this is a vector-based artwork, first of all, that was provided to me. And for those of you who've watched my other videos, you know our first step, almost 99.999% of the time, is to convert our vector artwork to a bitmap. So let's do that first. So we've selected our vector artwork here and gone to bitmaps, convert to bitmap, and just click OK. And now if we go into wireframe mode, you can see that we just have our outlines around our graphic, so we know that is a bitmap. In fact, if I back up for you, see now this is back to vector. All the cut lines are still there. So if we go bitmap, convert to bitmap, yes, now you can see we've lost all of our cut lines and now we are in fact just a bitmap. So currently the design was sent to me at 2 inches tall. So can we do the design we want to do and maintain that 2-inch height? Well, we don't know unless we try. So we're going to begin by setting our stone size here to SS6. Now, if it was something else like SS16, right-clicking on any of these numbers, in this case SS6, is going to change our stone size to SS6. And then if we right-click here to add stone, that is going to give us a little eyedropper where we can drop 1 single stone. You can see that's turned pink to let you know that you could drop additional stones if one wanted to. And when we hit the escape key, we exit out of that and that's no longer pink. So we know that, let's go back to enhanced mode here. We know that for cobalt blue, we want that line to be represented by 2 stones. So we'll offset, using our stone fill, we'll offset 1 stone, select them both, and you can see that this stone is going to overlap that blue. And that's problematic because we need just a little bit more room to represent 2 stones for cobalt. So what we're going to do is we're just going to stretch out our artwork a little bit, like so, and see now those 2 stones will just about fit. Not quite, but just about. And I think that's probably good enough for what we want. So let's take a look at what that height ultimately is, and that's basically 2 1/4 inches. It's a little bit more than 2 1/4, 2.293. So that's how big it has to be. And you know what? I can't change that. That's just how life is. So what we have to do now, of course, is we would have to go back to our customer and say, look, is this acceptable at 2 1/4 inches or is it not? In this case, we're going to assume it is going to be acceptable, and so we're going to do it at 2 1/4 inches. So first things first, let's right click on our bitmap here. So we just clicked on it, then right click on it and choose lock object. We could come all the way over here into EasyStone on the specialty tab and lock object that way too, but in this case we're not going to. The next thing we want to do is pull over a guideline that represents the center of the design, because goodness gracious, we don't want to create both sides of this design. How silly would that be? But you would be amazed at how many designs I've seen that are supposed to be symmetrical and they're not even close to being symmetrical. Those of you who know me know I went to school and was an architect for several years, and so things not being symmetrical for an architect just drives me batty. So this is symmetrical design. We only have to create half of it, which will save us half the work, which I love. And then that's it. So let's go ahead and begin our process by right-clicking and dropping a stone, hitting the escape key. We have to take this stone and put it right dead center. And for some reason, always puzzles me why. I can pick up the stone from the center point, but I can't. I can't connect it to that guideline. So the way we do, and we're supposed to be able to snap to guidelines, it's just not doing it. That's just Corel for us. So the way to fix it is you have to turn off the snap to guideline option and then turn it back on, and then pick up from the center, and then you can see, boop, see it says edge, then it will snap to the edge of the guideline. Alright, so now we're just going to move that up and down, that center point of that guideline, by using our shift key. That will constrain the movement to perfectly horizontal, perfectly vertical. Get it right down here to the bottom of Cobalt, and then we're going to offset. Now, I'm just going to do it the way I've always done it. I don't know why it's right or wrong, but it works. So we'll go to Stone Fill, and we're going to offset the number of steps, I don't know, 30 vertical. Bing! And see what it did. It created 30 stones vertical. Now, obviously, we didn't need quite 30 stones, but you get my drift. Okay? So that will tell us our height right there. Now, we still have to add our crystal outline when we get all done here, but that's where I would begin. You want to know where I'd begin? That's where I'd do it. I'm going to take these stones here, and I'm going to offset them. Let's just do, I don't know, 15. Okay, obviously that's too many, but we'll just trim it back. Let's change these to Cobalt. Change these to Cobalt. Change these to Cobalt. And I don't know. Let's change these to light cyan. And we'll offset these a couple, 2-3 times. I don't know. Let's see here. Is this what I want to do or not? And we can cheat and look at this one. See, this one here just has one row of crystal, and it's got 3 on the bottom of red like that. It's got 4 going vertical. So let's look at what we got over here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 going vertical. Ah, I see what's throwing me off. We need those to be cobalt blue. I knew that something just wasn't quite jiving with me there, but that's why. Alright, so now we can make those cobalt blue. I'm going to stop right there, dead my tracks, and go up to the top here. And I'm going to do the same thing. So for my steps, I'm just going to offset 10. I don't know how many I need. That was way too many. Okay, so we'll trim those back. And then these, I'm just going to go ahead and offset that many. So these need to be cobalt. So how am I going to do this? Alright, so those need to be cobalt. These need to be cobalt. I'm going to offset those again. I'll leave it at that. Now let's see. Back over here, it did 3 in crystal and 1 at the top. So we could do 4 in crystal and 1 at the top. I like that. Then here, there should be 2. So the way we're going to do this is the way we're going to do this. We have to first of all make sure that our stones are set to SS6, which it is. If we use Alt Control and this nudge, it'll nudge that basically a half a stone. So now we can turn that red. These probably should all be red. I don't know. We'll work on that. Now you can see here we have an overlap situation happening here. We're not going to focus too much on that just yet because we're going to have to modify some things anyhow. So the next step really is to get our cobalt taken care of. That's really where our next step is. So this angle of our cobalt, we gotta resolve that situation. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to manually place a stone here. Not going to be concerned about this one. And then I'm going to manually place a stone here. And I'm going to connect the two. See what that gives me. So this angle is not quite exactly right. You can see that there. It's off just a little bit. So I'm just going to undo that. And I'm just going to go ahead and move this over just a little bit more. And then do it again. Okay, so you see that. Now that angle is pretty close to what it was originally. I'm going to go ahead and add an additional stone. So you can see when I select that whole string of stones, all this stuff turns pink down here. So if I hit my target button, I can add a stone and then delete. Okay, which I'm going to go ahead and accept that. Now here you can see these stones are a little bit mashed up, but don't concern ourselves too much with that just yet. You can see this stone isn't exactly how it should be either, but again, don't concern ourselves too much. Now what we need to do is we need to copy this string that we just created. So I'll select the first in the string and the last in the string and hit S. That will select everything in between. I just need to copy that over. And I'm just going to do this manually. So I use my Shift key to move it perfectly horizontal, right click to make a duplicate, and pow, leave it. Call it good, just like that. Okay. Now, I want to do the same thing a couple more times because I need crystal and I need 2 strings of light cyan. And so what I'm going to do, what I'm going to try and do, I don't know how well it'll work, but is I'm going to use what I always call a target stone. So I manually moved this first row over and made a duplicate row. And now I want the successive rows to be moved over that same amount. And to do that, so I know it's exactly the same, is I grab a target stone, so I'm holding my Shift key. I have this whole string of stones selected. I'm going to grab my Shift key and click on that target stone and go from the center, right click, right click, right click. So you see what I did there? So this string of stones from here to here is going to be crystal. And this string of stones from there to there is going to be light cyan. And this string of stones from there to there is going to be light cyan. Okay? Done. Done and done. That's how it's going to be. All right. So now, really it's just a matter of filling in the dots. Well, how do we fill in the dots? How do we extend this string of stones all the way down? And how do we fix this mess up here with our A and so on and so forth? So we've got a few issues we have to fix. So these stones here are pretty easily fixed by just selecting them all along that string and hitting H to spread them out horizontally. This we can't do a whole lot with. I mean, this little stone here, you know, it's just there. But we could probably, let's see here, we could delete that stone. But then these two, yeah, that'll actually work out fine. These two will have to be cobalt because we need that 2 rows, and then we'll just do a single row across the top there, and that'll be brilliant. then this stone right there could be light cyan. Yeah, that'll work. And I'll show you what we'll do to fix that at the top here a little bit later on. But what I'm really concerned about is extending this down. And this right here has got to be nudged back. Perhaps this has got to come over. And you know, we got some work we got to do to fancy this up a little bit. So this is really where, if you understand what you want to do, EasyStone has some unique functionality that allows us to make that process fairly simple. And of course, you'll probably see as I do my demonstrations, if you've watched other videos, I think probably a lot like an architect. And the tools in EasyStone are designed a lot like an architect would use. But at any rate, what I need to do is I need to create a guideline at this angle. So we can just select two stones. So click on one, hold our shift key and click on the other and hit GA for guide at angle. And then we need a horizontal guideline. So we'll right click, center vertical, or if we right click, center horizontal. And now this stone needs to be boop right there. And that lines up. And then we need to do the same thing here. Right click, this stone here needs to be right there. And then we can just take these and do a horizontal and do the same thing here. Horizontal. So the spacing is a little bit different, but it all works out in the end. Now, same thing here. We need to take this and this in guided angle. And then we'll take a stone from here and move it down here. And then we know that we can then take this, make another duplicate, and just drop it right there. And then the same thing here. So we're going to do guided angle and guided angle. And then we're going to take this red one and drop it right there. And this red one and drop it right there. And then here, to fill the gap, we're just going to drop another one and another one. Right? Anywhere we want there, it doesn't really matter. Now, what we need to do then is we need to kind of reconnoiter these stones up here and kind of redo some things. Right now, everything's a bit messy, and so what I'd like to do is I'd like to peel this away, if possible, and then go ahead and fill in, go back through and fill in the blanks here. This one here needs to be crystal. This one here, however, needs to be light cyan. But so now that I've got the basis of my design done, let's pull it away. Let's grab the whole thing and make a duplicate way over yonder and see now what we actually have here. And this is, something more along the lines of what I can work with. So this is only half of the design, okay? And so let's go ahead and add our crystal outline. So we're going to do this. Change that to crystal. So we're just going to offset all of this. You can see what we're doing here. It's pretty basic. We're just offsetting and adding a crystal outline. Same thing here. We're going to offset in our crystal outline and offset to the top. Crystal outline. I like to do as much of my work as I can on the half, because then when I flip it, then it's just going to be very simple to do whatever else we need it to do. So for this one, I'm going to select my first stone in the sequence and my last stone. Select, that selects everything in between. Remember the target stone we used before. Hold our shift key, add this one and move it over. That's our target. Now we can change all those to crystal. We don't need that one. And you can see here, this is a little bit messy, right? But that's okay. We'll take this one, this one, this one, this one, and horizontal. This one, obviously, we don't need, so we'll get rid of that one. Then here, we can take these at this angle. Right-click to respace all of those. And then really, we have one more. This one. So it'd be something like that. If we want to tuck it, I don't know. I don't know how exactly you want to handle the corner, but some of those things, you gotta have a give and take. Now, one thing we could do, if we did want to clean that up, we could try sacrificing this a little bit. And so what we could do is squeeze it all in, which I wouldn't care to do that. So there it is. Squeeze it in. And so it's a little bit neater looking there. But then what we'd have to do is we'd have to fix this going horizontally. So then these would all be a little bit closer together. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So let's just select them all. Select them all to here. I can live with that. And then that will give us our corner that's a little bit sharper. Those are all little things that as a designer, you ultimately have to decide, because sometimes it's hard to squeeze everything in exactly the way we would like it. These are pretty tight, so I'd probably, fudge that one stone there just a tiny little bit. But I'm happy with that. All right, so now I would go ahead and fill this stuff in. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that quick. And I'm just using my Shift key and hitting my space bar to make duplicates. So you can see there's no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing, really. I'm just kind of by gosh and by golly what I think it can do. Okay, so you can see it's very unfinished, and that's okay, because now I'm going to flip it. And so now this is going to be, that has to be cobalt also. So now I'm going to go ahead and flip it over. And the way the mirror function works here in EasyStone is the last stone selected is our pivot point. So we're going to unselect and then reselect. That'll be our pivot point because that was the last stone selected, and mirror it. There we go. So now we have to kind of put things back together again, kind of like Humpty Dumpty. So we're going to go ahead and just do this row by row. And see there what we did there. Sort these out horizontally. These out horizontally. All the way down. Now this is a little bit tight here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. This one actually is a little bit tight too, but I'm going to leave that one. This one, I'm just going to make it something like that. And this one here. And this one here, all the way across. So what I'm doing is I'm holding down my Shift key and just clicking on every one. So I could just also select the first and last in the sequence and do a horizontal spacing that way too. Alright, so now that pretty well gets me. The only thing that looking at this that I might want to modify a little bit here is at the top. I'm just going to do 2 red at the top instead, like so. And so what do I do here? Well, I'm going to just delete one on either side and just spread these out a little bit. And I think it'll be just fine. And if I really, really wanted to, if I was really concerned about it, and I'm kind of a stickler, it's got to be absolutely 100% symmetrical. Because I manually adjusted this one. Now I'll go ahead and select all these going across. And just spread them out that way. Alright. So that concludes then that design. So let's go ahead and do a check spacing. Okay, there's no overlapping shapes found. That's good. Let's add a weed box. And what I do is I always make a copy. So I'm selecting the entire design with the weed box, holding my click and drag, hold my Shift key down, and then right click to make a duplicate. And then the one here on the right, I always do a quick proof on. Quick proof will simulate our stones. It will add our dimensions. So you can see here what we've accomplished. It's 2.75 inches wide by 2.5 inches tall. Easy Stone always rounds to the nearest quarter inch. So even though it was a little bit taller than 2.25, you can see here it's 2.79, I guess. Well, this is a better example. 2.543. So it wound up being just a little bit bigger than 2.5 inches instead of our 2.25 with our border and whatnot. But if you look at this design, let's go ahead and do that. Let's compare this one with the original that was provided to us. You can see it's quite a bit larger. But this design also, I should point out, isn't scaled to size here in CorelDRAW. So it looks bigger than it probably really is. But if you look at the stones, okay, from the center point here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And what we created is 12 stones wide. So it's an extra stone wide than what the original was. Which, let's see here. Not sure there's an easy way to fix that. Oh yes, there is. See that right there? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that could be pretty easily fixed if we didn't want it that way. I think, because see, these are 2 stones, we could just move that in one. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and delete that half again. It's a minor tweak, but you can go ahead and do it quick. Ain't gonna hurt nothing. Let's move that back out. And probably what I'd see how tight that is. I don't like that. So what I'd do here is, remember up top we brought it in a little bit. This one I'll bring out a little bit. So we'll go ahead and give us our spacing there. And then we can go back in here. And we'll just spread it all out. There's some overlapping stones there because we moved one in. But we'll just spread it back out. These here, we'll just spread all the way. But we'll have to fix it because it's not exactly right. These 2 here should line up with those. So now we can spread it all the way. And now, if we select those, there's 12 objects. One's got to be sitting on top of another. No? Let's see here. Well, we'll just delete one. It's probably our spacing issue. There we go. That'll look better. Okay. So now we've taken care of that extra stone, and that looks a little bit better. Here we've got so here these 2 are supposed to be crystal. There we go. So now that's going to be a little bit more accurate. So let's mirror that. Let's select that, check for no overlapping stones, add a weed box, make a copy, do a quick proof again, and now our dimension should be a little bit more accurate now. So basically now it's square. It's 2.5 by 2.5. So that is basically the finished product. And if we look here, there's 4 stones before the crossbar, and on the original there is only 3 stones, and then the cross, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 high. So on this one there is 4, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tall. So this one's a little bit taller than the one that was provided for us, which that makes sense because this is about 2.5 inches tall. So, but anyhow, that gives you an idea of how you would go about, creating that design, and just thinking about that whole process of how exactly you want that particular design to look. Let's see here. Yeah, see how this one came down and around, and this one basically does the same thing. Comes down and around and then back up again. So anyhow, hopefully that gives you a better understanding of how to do, it actually took us about 20 minutes to do the logo, but that whole thought process of all the various tools that we have in EasyStone to make that process easier for you as you go. So thanks for watching.